Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Easter sunrise service in our backyard. This definitely will not be your traditional Easter sunrise service, but I hope that you find it an intimate and meaningful way to start your Easter Sunday. So let's get started with a little Easter poem from Erin that we'd like to lift up as our prayer this morning.
This is a poem called Recognizing You by Amy Scott Robinson and Richard Lyle. Jesus in the garden, newly risen from the dead, who stood by weeping Mary and heard the words she said, as if you were the gardener, till at last your shepherd's voice called her Mary, and with one word gave her reason to rejoice. Jesus in the garden, ever new but still the same, help me recognize you in the speaking of my name. Jesus on the journey, fellow traveler on the road, who met two sad disciples, walking with them as you showed the meaning of the scriptures that predicted you would rise, but only when you blessed the meal could they believe their eyes. Jesus on the journey, meet me where my hopes have fled, help me recognize you in the breaking of the bread. Jesus in the locked room, breaking through despair and doubt, who comforted your friends when they had shut the whole world out, who came again for Thomas and revealed your hands and side, so that he could touch and know you as alive, though you had died. Jesus in the locked room, breaking through our self-built bars, help me recognize you in the touching of your scars. Jesus on the shoreline, cooking breakfast for your friends, who offered guilty Peter one more chance to make amends, who filled a net with fish for him and helped him to recall the first catch that convinced him to respond to your first call. Jesus on the shoreline, know my best, forgive my worst. Help me recognize you in the way I met you first.
Amen. Thank you for that, Erin.
My pleasure.
So this season for Erin and I has been one of mixed emotions, and you've probably felt the same way, at least on some level. And I'm not really giving a sermon today, we're just having a little chat together. But if I had to call it something, I think I'd call it mixed emotions. Because there's just tons of unexpected change. It brings the possibility of new creative opportunity, but change can also mean coping with loss, and the loss of something that we previously knew and previously cherished. And on one hand, it's Easter morning, and I should be excited. But it's the sunrise, and it's really early, and I would really appreciate going back to bed, too. It's a joyous holiday on one hand, but many of us feel isolated and missing our traditions. And on one hand, I am ready to feel joy already, but I also recognize that it's a global season of sadness. So it's this mixed emotion that we're just left with during this Easter season. This last Wednesday, we had a house church that's been meeting via Zoom, and this week the theme was despair and deliverance. The despair of Friday, seeing the death of Jesus, where no angel army came to rescue him. Their Messiah appears to fail in just epic and horrific fashion before their eyes. But then the deliverance of Sunday, knowing that despite all of that, he is risen. This polarization of despair and deliverance, from death to life. Easter just offers us this incredibly stark contrast. And here's what struck me about the conversation we had, though. We all agreed that we're just sick of despair. We're tired of feeling vulnerable, tired of feeling scared, tired of feeling like victims. It's just mixed emotions. Because along with all of that, we simultaneously recognize such privilege and the blessings that we all are experiencing in this situation. I learned something new about the Easter story this year, and Jane will expand on this a little bit in her sermon. But in those times, To go to the graves late at night or early in the morning was a risky and really shady thing to do. You didn't want to be associated with the grave robbing and stuff that went on. And there were Roman guards posted outside Jesus' tomb just to protect from things exactly like that. So going there in the early morning was an incredibly dangerous and bold move for Mary and Mary to do. And yet, the Marys do exactly that. They know that Jesus is dead, but they go anyways. They don't go expecting an empty tomb, and they don't go looking or hoping for a resurrected Christ. They're shocked, and they're afraid when they get there and they realize that the grave is open. They are afraid of the terrible implications and the possibility maybe even of their guilty association. So think about it. Maybe that's why in the book of Mark, the gospel ends with the women leaving in fear and not telling anyone. They have just witnessed the risen Christ and an empty tomb, and they are so jumbled with emotion. They're so mixed up, they just can't even process what they've just experienced. Now, at the Wednesday worship discussion, at one point, somebody said it bluntly. I'm just over despair. Can I just be happy already? And I've been chewing on that for a couple days now, struggling with it. Is it okay for me to be happy now? Is it insensitive for me to celebrate and rejoice while so many suffer? Am I being crude by asking us to sing songs of praise during a storm? If there is one thing you remember from this morning's early service, it's this. Whatever you are feeling during this pandemic is right. There isn't any cookie-cutter emotional response during this season of mixed emotions that we should be striving for. And maybe now we can all better relate to the mixed emotions that the Marys must have experienced that Easter morning. The last thing in the world they wanted or expected was to see an empty tomb. But yet, God's deliverance couldn't be contained. Not even death could stop Jesus. And this season can't conquer the resurrection either. God's goodness and grace and compassion and love are still on full display. So don't feel bad for feeling joy. Celebrate in full force. But also don't feel bad for feeling bad. It's a natural response for the things that are happening in the world today. So this morning, we just take a moment to pause and remember the significance of today and the Easter story, because whether we're ready for it or not, Jesus has risen. Death has been conquered, our sins are forgiven, and we do have a reason to celebrate. So even in the storms we find ourselves in, it is good and appropriate to rejoice. So come with me inside. We can sing a little bit without waking up our neighbors. And so Erin and I can get a little bit more coffee. And let's go rejoice a little bit together with song. Woo-hoo! Woo! Okay, I'm just going to pivot. Wait, don't get it. So welcome inside, everybody. I wanted to invite you to sing one of my favorite Easter songs. It is Amazing Love by Hillsong. So the words will be on the screen. You can sing along as you would like to wake up all of your neighbors as well, or just feel free to sit and listen in as well and use this as your morning meditation. Forsaken, and I'm accepted. your spirit is within me, because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you. And I'm forgiven because you were forsaken, and I'm accepted. You were condemned, and I'm alive and well. Your spirit is within me, because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, would die for me? Amazing love, I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do. I honor you in all I do. I honor you. Thank you, everybody. Happy Easter, and we'll see you at 10 a.m. for a full service.